This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is George Roach, the CEO of Premier African Minerals, following news that Canmax have terminated the agreement with Prem for the offtake of spodumene from the Zulu lithium project, and thus a force majeure has been in effect and called by Prem due to unforeseen issues around the EDS mill. So George, first of all, I need to get your reaction to this news. Of course, the market not liking that news at all, the share price reacting very badly to that, understandably. How are you feeling?
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity and good to talk to you as always. I think as per the RNS that we've already released, Canmax are acting against their own agreement that they signed with us. Force majeure was in effect and was in effect before they called a cancellation. Under the agreement, they can't call a cancellation when force majeure is in effect. So the cancellation is of absolutely no force or effect at all. It's invalid, unlawful, it's whatever other words you want to put to it. And as far as I'm concerned, their release without any consultation with us at all on their stock exchange to that effect is disingenuous, to be polite about it. There is no proper basis for it, as far as I'm concerned. They are trying to fabricate one in the background. The facts of the agreement that we are both party to is that in this instance, if they are disputing the force majeure, which was in effect before 24 to 48 hours before they called a cancellation, and on that basis, as I say, the cancellation is of no force or effect. It's completely invalid. Under the agreement, they need to engage for the next 10 days in friendly negotiations and discussions with us. I've made it clear in the public domain that I'm very happy to have exactly that conversation related to the supply situation. And the door remains open. I'm absolutely ready to have that negotiation. If Canmax are not going to go down this route and have the discussions with us and are going to insist in traveling down the road they're on, then it's a dispute situation, and the dispute will be referred to arbitration in Singapore. The contract is governed under Singapore law. And if we are to go down that route, then unfortunately, it's where they're going to take us. And if that's where we have to go, that's where we'll go. I think the most important thing to understand at the moment is that the notice is ineffectual. It's worth nothing, as I've said 3 or 4 times already. As a result, there is no 90-day period within which anything has got to be repaid at this point in time. When the force majeure issue is resolved, in whatever way it's resolved, if Canmax want to serve this notice again, then they'll serve it again. And then there'll be a period of 90 days. That's at their discretion. I hope that they will rather sit down and have a proper negotiation with us. And let's go back to where we thought we were in the beginning, which was that we had acknowledged that there were difficulties and we were finding a mutually effective way out of it.
Well, that is key, isn't it? You were acknowledging the difficulties and trying to find a mutual way out of it. You've mentioned there the door remains open, but this suggests to me that perhaps the discussions are not as forthcoming as you would have hoped. We've spoken many times about both parties wanting to work together. They need spodumene, you need an offtake provider. Has the relationship soured here a bit, do you think?
Mark, I don't know whether the relationship has soured per se. I've had no verbal communication with anybody in the last, well, not in the last, I don't know, this week basically. But prior to that, and in the earlier part of last week, we had the clear impression that there was a basis for going forward. We understood that Canmax was going to provide us with some additional assistance to cover OPEX while the plant issues were resolved. I mean, the force majeure situation, de facto, there's been that status for a while now. We just didn't call it, and I didn't particularly want to call it because we were in a reasonable discussion. But in the latter part of last week, we received a markup to the amended agreement that was, Prem couldn't accept it. It imposed, and I think I've made it clear, it imposed a pricing structure that was just unacceptable the way it was set out. Not that I'm opposed to a profit share, but I'm opposed to a situation where the cost of our production was being predetermined and had no latitude for dealing with future variations that may occur. We're not our own, we don't have grid connection for electricity, for example. Diesel is a huge operating cost, element in the OPEX. And there's no adjustment to any of these things. So what was set out was unacceptable. And then wanting to turn the previous prepayment into a convertible loan note effectively was equally distasteful. And the board wasn't going to accept these things. Simultaneous with that, Canmax had, and I can talk, and I'm going to talk frankly about this, Canmax had in fact indicated to us that they supported the resolutions that were to be proposed at our AGM, which took place on Monday. And on that basis, the original vote count that we were given, that we looked at in the latter part of last week, indicated that the resolutions would carry comfortably. Yet, at a point in time when we rechecked this, shortly before or after voting had effectively closed, there was a reversal on the vote count. I mean, exactly who reversed what and so on, I don't know, because I don't necessarily see those things. But I think there was a fairly clear implication as to what was going on. And simultaneous with that was this aggressively marked up document. And, you know, on that basis, it seemed as though, having given us the indication that we'd have help with OPEX, that this was being withdrawn at the last minute, unless we agreed to outrageous terms, in our opinion, that were not acceptable. It was almost as though somebody was trying to back us into a corner. And, you know, and unfortunately, we're a public company responsible to our own shareholders. And it just wasn't in their interests that we should accede to what was being effectively imposed on us.
Okay, so they've not been. We've obviously spoken about this renegotiated deal with basing lithium hydroxide and also shipping smaller quantities, and of course the support from Canmax there with ongoing OPEX. And this seemed all in good faith and was going ahead. But I remember you said you wanted to pass the resolution regarding the share ceiling so that you weren't being strong-armed, effectively backed into a corner, which now appears to be the case. They may be muscling around on their position a little bit there, but with you now having passed that resolution, in effect, is it fair to say you actually don't need Canmax? I know I want to talk to you about other offtake partners as well.
No. The resolution to disapply preemptive rights did not pass. Initially, when we looked at the initial vote count that was given to us by the registrars, it did. Subsequently, certain voting was clearly changed, and it then did not pass. So the disapplication has not passed, and we are not in a position to make any direct placement of shares for cash.
Okay.
We are in a situation where we could issue on an open offer basis, for example, to all shareholders. If we made an open offer and some of it was not taken up, we could then make a placement of those shares. But that has effectively removed that route from us.
Okay.
And it goes to the impression that there was an effort being made, I think, to back us into a corner, to force acceptance of an agreement that to us was unacceptable. So having gone through that, it's caused all sorts of other problems, as you can imagine. We were in a very late stage in terms of our audit and audit sign-off. There are implications with that. And I'm pleased to say that as I'm talking to you, I believe that our annual financial statements have been signed off. Okay. And are probably be released pretty well simultaneous with the release of this. So we worked our way through that problem, difficult as it was, but we've done it.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear, because that was a question I was sent. I think people are quite concerned about those accounts. So that's good you clarified that. However, you are in a slightly, or quite significantly weaker position now, though, aren't you, as a company? Because you have ongoing costs for this until such time as you're able to sell the material.
Yes, absolutely. That is precisely where we are. And at this stage in Prem's life, I'm not going to allow that to get in the way and to stop us. I've said repeatedly that there is such a demand for spodumene at the moment this is one of the things I don't understand. And Canmax clearly is involved in this. And to me, I don't understand what it is that has prevents them from understanding this, that if they are not going to go ahead and purchase our spodumene, that there is a line of people wanting to do it.
Okay.
And equally, there are people wanting to do it on a basis that will include making funds available to settle whatever it is that needs to be paid to Canmax in time. I'm not denying at any point, and Prem never has, that this plant would not have been built without the prepayment that Canmax has made. If they don't want to take spodumene and deal with us in the normal way, then there are many others who, in my view, are going to do it.
Okay, so they've got 10 days in which to reply to you. Otherwise, will you seek to engage with other parties?
No, not necessarily. Under our force majeure, if they dispute the force majeure, if they dispute it, and we can't resolve it within 10 days, they are entitled to initiate an arbitration process through the arbitration, whatever it is, in Singapore. At the moment, under the circumstances we're sitting with at the moment, with where Canmax are, that cancellation is of no force or effect. It means absolutely nothing. The existence of the force majeure effectively suspends the terms and conditions of the agreement. They're suspended. Their right to cancel and call for repayment is suspended. Our obligations to meet certain supply dates and so on is suspended. That's the effect of force majeure under the agreement. The situation is very frustrating. And as far as I'm concerned, what Canmax's apparent behavior has caused is a very frustrating situation within Prem. I take the view, and it's clear, that the agreements with Canmax are with Premier African Minerals. Zulu Lithium and Tantalum is its own Zimbabwean company. It has its own responsibilities, for that matter, as does Prem. And if we're not going to be able to get Canmax to buy the spodumene we produce, which I certainly hope they will, then there are plenty of other people who are going to.
Okay.
So my obligations are to me and to the companies at the moment, and that is to ensure that under this apparent desire to cancel from Canmax, that I ensure that there is a proper future planned out for Premier and for Zulu Lithium and Tantalum. And that's where my mind is. So if others wish to make the funds available to repay Canmax, I will make the offer to Canmax.
So if you need to make the funds available to repay Canmax?
I don't need to make any funds available to repay Canmax at this time. Under force majeure, I do not need to. The point that I'm making is that we acknowledge that Canmax facilitated the building of the mine through a prepayment. And if Canmax is not going to be the buyer of our spodumene, and in that way allow us to liquidate the prepayment that Canmax has provided in time, by offset or cash collection or whatever it may be related to the sale of spodumene, if that is not to be the case, then there are other parties who have expressed strong interest in negotiating with us to take over the Canmax position, and in that way, in time, facilitate a repayment.
Right. Okay. So you're confident then with the other parties who expressed interest that there is a way forward here with Canmax or potentially without Canmax?
Absolutely, Mark. Absolutely. This deposit, in context, we're sitting with a mine that is complete. We've got a pit that's down through the weathered zone in places. We've got good ore sitting in that pit. We've got all aspects of the plant operational and functional, bar the sizing section, which is Stock's responsibility. They've acknowledged it and they must fix it. We've got infrastructure in place. We've got water supply. We've got power. We've got tailings. We've got roads. We've got permits. Everything is here. Everything is fully operational. I don't think there are many alternative mining operations able to produce spodumene at this state. And I frankly just don't think that the value of that is being appreciated for one moment.
Okay. Well, I did just finish a conversation with Stark, and they informed me that the trucks have been released for getting that hydro sorter in place. So that means that production should recommence within 1 to 2 weeks, is what they told me. And that would put the plant at 50% capacity or throughput, nameplate throughput, still on track for the 125% in 6 months' time, as our discussions before and as per news releases. Very quickly, just on other partners, are you able to name any names, George?
I don't want to at the moment. I really don't. I will say this to you, that there are significant large international trading houses that really want to deal with us, that have given indications of indicative terms, obviously all subject to final contract and so on.
Sure.
All subject to us getting proper legal advice and opinions in regard to how we resolve this issue with Canmax. All of that. But they are there. The people are there. The people that want it are there.
Okay.
The other thing I just want to mention, just ever so briefly, is that Prem's sitting with 50% as well in these Matari claims with Li3. And what we're beginning to see come from Li3 appears to be very significant. I think I've alluded to this before. I've made comments in relation to this before. Intrusive exploration work is now underway. Some of the shareholders, some of the backing that Li3 has in Canada is very significant. And I don't know that the size of Zulu Prem, together with its Zulu and its EPO, the fact that this plant is where it is, and then what's happening in the Matari claims area, where there is already Sabi Star constructing a mine within a couple of 100 meters of our claim boundaries. I don't know that this message is clearly coming through at the moment. That maybe not everything in Zimbabwe has been completely closed off and is going east. Maybe there are some other alternatives.
Okay, so just explain, Li3, is that a different project?
Li3 is the company that has the other 50% of our claims in Mutare.
Okay. So let me just come on to some of the points here. In terms of cash flow, how is that going to be addressed in the short term?
I will make available to the company sufficient of my own stock, my own shares, to enable the company to manage its way through this existing situation. I may add that I've had other offers as well from other, it doesn't matter from where, but I've had other significant offers.
So you will cover the OPEX for the near term?
I will make sure that the company has the wherewithal to cover its OPEX in the near term, unless somebody else is going to step in very quickly and cover it. That's part of some of the other conversations, but I will make sure that the company has the wherewithal, yes.
Okay. Are you able to let me know how many other interested parties are there? Numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. A fair number then. A fair number. Okay.
They're a fair number. There are quite serious conversations.
Okay.
With a good couple of them at the moment.
Okay. Well, let me come on to some questions that shareholders have before we finish off. Are you able to let us know the current grades that are coming out of the plant there for the SC6 grades?
Well, let me rather talk about the ore feed at the moment. Let me rather talk about that and what we need to achieve. Because I think the question in terms of grades that I've seen that's coming to me related to the feed to the flotation section. And let me make this comment that the way the pegmatite occurs, excuse that noise, Mark, it will go away in a moment. The way this pegmatite occurs is that it's a wide pegmatite which is fairly evenly mineralized across the pegmatite. It's not zoned. A lot of pegmatites are zoned with a narrow central core, and then the mineralization slowly fades away. So the pegmatite that we have here is ideally suited to the use of sorters. The first sorters are XRT that sort on density, and these sorters are intended to take out host and country rock, waste material. The second set of sorters that Stark have on truck and that are due to be installed now in these next coming 10 days or so are UV sorters. The UV sorters are intended to identify spodumene-rich zone or spodumene-rich mineralization within the pegmatite, within this entire pegmatite, and to take out pegmatite material that is devoid of spodumene and focus what is rich in spodumene into the feed. Now, the feed grade that we are seeing before the UV sorters, going into the flotation section is around about a little bit more, 1.2% there or thereabouts. Now, on the basis that that is predominantly spodumene, and on the basis that we're recovering in the region of 80% of the spodumene, that in itself, at this stage, gives us a decent, theoretically, once everything is operating properly, gives us a decent quantity of spodumene being produced. However, we expect that the ROM pad average grade is going to be somewhere in the region of 0.8, 1 there or thereabouts in that kind of region. The expectation of the sorters when they're all installed is that the grade as a result of these sorters will more than double going into the plant. At a feed grade into the plant is the wrong word, into the milling section of the circuit. That kind of feed grade at a little over 2%, which I think is a very reasonable expectation, comfortably gives us, at the tonnages and throughput we have, our target of 7 tons an hour plus of spodumene.
Right.
So I'm comfortable that we will get to where we need to get to, on the basis that the circuit has not run with sufficient tonnage up until this point in time. I'm not prepared. I've been asked, and I was asked again yesterday, whether we would be prepared to sell what concentrate is sitting at the plant. And the answer to that is no, because I don't think that that some of the contaminants that should be removed from spodumene have been adequately removed. I'm concerned about it. I do not have final assay results on that yet. That is still to come. The facts, however, are that when those assay results do come in, it's not considered adequate, that those spodumene concentrates that may have an elevated mica content stand to be reprocessed very easily and very quickly through this flotation circuit.
Okay.
So I hope that gives some context to the answer.
Yes, that helps a lot, because people are wondering what's happening with the bags that are sat really, that have been processed. So you're waiting for assay results. You're not confident it will reach the spodumene grade, but you hopefully can reprocess it to get mica, which is a saleable product.
Mark, sorry, let me correct that. It's not that there is not good spodumene grades. It is that the mica component is a contaminant in a spodumene concentrate.
Okay.
And it leads to all sorts of problems down the line, processing into hydroxide.
Okay.
That's why our flotation circuit looks to remove the micas first before we go to spodumene flotation.
Okay.
And I don't think that all the micas have been removed properly.
Okay. Okay. So you're awaiting assays on the end product, but the feed coming to the mill is currently around 1%, getting it up to, well, over 2%, like you say, and that will be. And what is it you need to get the SC6? Is it more around 2% feed coming to the mill?
I can get SC6 at 1%.
You can get it at 1.
If I put 1% feed grade in, theoretically, that will still give me 3 to 4 tons an hour. At the targeted, I mean, the quantity of spodumene to be produced just rises continuously.
Okay. Well, hopefully that gives enough answer on grades for now, whilst we await those assay results. I know the plant is currently stopped pending the installation of the hydro sorting, which again, as we've discussed, will upgrade that. So we'll have to wait a little bit longer until we can see what's coming off the end of the plant once that's installed. Let me move on to some other questions. Can we expect that if a new offtake partner steps in, they will cover the OPEX cost and pay off Canmax? I guess that's subject to negotiations with those partners.
Absolutely, it is, yes.
Okay.
But it's an integral component of the negotiation and the discussion.
Indeed. Okay. So the next question that I have here, are you concerned that you might get into a legal battle with Canmax? Would that be something that would really mess things up?
I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to end up with legal battles, but you know, if that is where Canmax wants to take it, I unfortunately cannot avoid it.
Sure.
The view has been expressed, for what it's worth, through our solicitors, who have actually responded. Our solicitors have responded strongly to Canmax. in regard to this.
If that does
purported
happen, will the whole project be on hold pending legal proceedings?
No,
No. Okay.
no, not at all. I don't think it's recognized yet that the agreement with Canmax is with Premier African Minerals. Zulu Lithium and Tantalum is a completely independent company. It's a Zimbabwean registered independent company that is owned by Premier indirectly through a Mauritian subsidiary of ours.
Okay.
It's its own company. It has its own responsibility, its own board of directors. They really are, whilst we own it, they are independent, and Zulu Lithium will continue to develop and will produce spodumene. That's what it's about. That's what it's intended to do.
Okay, good. Now, someone would like to know if we can see a tweet or a picture of the hydro sizer arriving at site. They think the Twitter comments has dried up a little bit recently.
Well, I'm hoping that there'll be lots of photographs of lots of trucks again, and lots of trains, and lots of installations, lots of stockpiles, and so on and so forth. Okay. And there is a hell of a lot. There really is at the moment.
Okay. I know someone did suggest paying me a subscription fee to stay on site and just continuously do stuff, but I'm not sure that would really work in reality terms. The subscription would probably have to be quite high. But just a couple of other questions, George. If Canmax are repaid, are they still entitled to 50% if they hold the 3 billion shares?
If they continue to hold a certain percentage of Prem's issued share capital, it's not the 3 billion, it's a percentage of Prem's issued share capital. Okay. So should Prem's issued shares increase, Canmax would be in a position where they would have an opportunity to also increase their holding on the same price, terms and conditions as anybody else, or not. Would be entirely up to them to do so. They did choose earlier, when we did some placements a little while ago, not to participate. As a result, whilst they retained their same number of shares, their percentage of the offtake slightly dropped.
Okay, that's fine. So just a final thought, George. Of course, the finance needs to be sorted. You stated that in the short term, you will make sure that the short-term cash flow is covered. But of course, that can only last so long, another month down the line here. But all being well, within a couple of weeks, the plant will be up and running properly again, and at 50% throughput, nameplate throughput. So that's not too long away. That was also confirmed by Stark earlier today. What are the next steps as we go into July? It's very important that things with Canmax are either sorted out or indeed another way forward is found. So where's your focus going to be?
All right. So let me come back almost in summary, and let me say that I sincerely hope that Canmax and Premier can now take time and communicate correctly and adequately as is contemplated in the agreement. I do not believe that this kind of impasse needs to end up in a court anywhere. I think it requires some reasonableness on the part of everybody. And I'm completely committed to finding an equitable solution. However, as I think I've made it very clear, I think that Canmax and their release was wrong. Their notice of cancellation, as far as we're concerned, is of no force or effect. And we have told them so in really in no uncertain terms. We've reserved all our rights in regard to that. Because it's caused, I mean, if you think about it, it's caused a massive depreciation in the value of Prem. Speaking personally as a shareholder, it's impacted me personally, as has it to all other shareholders. And the statement was based on something that's just plain wrong. So, that needs to be set aside. It needs to be dealt with. We need to remedy, sort out how best we can the relationship, and let's find a way forward together. Canmax is a substantial company. I always thought that we had a very good rapport and relationship with them. I hope that hasn't gone, and I hope that in the future we'll be able to find ourselves and actually see this Zulu, and then coupled to the Matari scenario and so on and so forth, in the light of what this thing really and truly, I believe, is going to be worth.
Okay. And in the meantime, you will be having discussions with the other interested parties.
I have no alternative but to do so.
Okay.
And I am actively.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again for your time today, George Roach, the CEO of Premier African Minerals, and I'm sure it won't be too long until we're catching up again, but thank you very much for now.
Thanks indeed, Mark. Thanks. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.